In this video, we're going to be talking about the composition of functions. So another way of combining two functions is to form a composition of one with the other. So for example, if I have f of x equals x squared and g of x equals x plus 1, then the composition of f with g is going to go as follows. So I'm going to take my g, and my g is going to go inside of the function of f, right? So my f of x no longer is an x there. I am putting my g inside everywhere there's an x. So it was supposed to be an x squared, so I replace that with my g of x, and that's going to be my answer. Okay, the composition is denoted by f, this tiny little o, g. Sometimes it looks like this, maybe spaced out just slightly better. And it's read as f composed with g. So we're going to go ahead and do an example, kind of talk about this a little bit more. So we want to find the composition of f with g of x when we have an f of x of x squared, where x must be greater than or equal to 0, and a g of x where x that has x minus 1, and the restriction here is that x must be greater than or equal to 1. So it wants us to find that composition. Okay, we're going to find that composition, and then if it's possible, we're going to evaluate it at 2 and 0. Okay, so what that means is we're going to take our f function, and everywhere there's an x, we're going to put in parentheses there, and what we're going to put inside of there is going to be our g of x. Okay, or g of x. So we're going to put in an x minus 1 there. So here, our f composed with g of x equals the square root of x minus 1, where x must be greater than or equal to 1. Now the domain of our composition here is going to be 1 to infinity. So we want to take, so the domain of the composition of f and g is the set of all of the x's in the domain of g, such that the function, that g of x, is going to be in the domain of f. So you want to take the most restrictive domain, is usually how that works best. So now we want to try and evaluate this. So we want to evaluate f composed with g of x, except not x, right? We want to compose it with 2. Let's do that the color so we can see it. So we're going to have the square root of x minus 1, and we're going to put our 2 in there, and then we're going to have the square root of 1, which is 1, and that's inside of our domain right here, right? That's inside of our domain, and so it works. So we can find that. And then we also want to try and find our f composed with g of 0, if that's possible. And so now we're going to plug in that 0, and that's going to give us the square root of negative 1, which is an imaginary number. So it is our letter I. So this is not defined, because if we look at our domain, right, our domain was everything from 1 to infinity, and I is not in that. So it is not defined, which tells us that that is not possible to evaluate. So it's not possible. So our answers would be, so let's write this down. Here's our domain, right? And we're done.